Wrestling podcast never felt this great. Tables, ladders, chairs, they tell it all. From the highest highs to the lowest fall. Grit and glory tales from the ring. Every chant, every cheer they'll bring. Devon and the Duke bring the heat. Wrestling tales knock you off your seat. Tune in now, don't you be late. Wrestling podcast never felt this great.
Brothers and sisters, welcome back. Welcome back to another exciting edition of the three-time award-winning podcast, Devon and the Duke, hosted by your main man, Duke Loves Wrestling, and of course, the five-time Hall of Famer, the YouTube sensation, the man that keeps going viral, Brother Devon Dudley. What's going on there, man?
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm having some phone issues, but trying to get through it.
Yeah, it looks like Verizon, I don't know, man. They're having some issues there. Maybe somebody didn't show up for work or whatever, but everybody's service is kind of spotty today, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that maybe it wouldn't infect the podcast, but here we go. We're gonna give it a try.
Listen, technical difficulties are always guaranteed, no matter what you do online. So, we done been there and done that a few
I agree
times,
with
so
that.
it's all good. Yeah. Listen, remember when we had Lacey Evans on the show and I was having the internet issues?
The problems, yeah, I had to talk to her for about a good 40 minutes without you being on there.
You had to do your best Tom Brokaw there. You done turned into the straight man, so to speak, in that situation. You weren't the sizzle anymore,
No.
It happens. It happens. Listen, Devon, first of all, congratulations. You went viral a couple more times last week. Last week's episode, through the roof. Folks loved it. So much great feedback. There was a request for us in the future to do an episode about 9/11 and talk about that show because, you and I were talking about Lillian Garcia singing the national anthem and all that. Folks want to hear more about that background. So, in a couple weeks or so, let's do an episode on that where we talk about from 9/11 till, that show and even beyond, what was going on backstage? How are you feeling? What are some of the things that people may not necessarily know about? What do you think about that concept?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I mean, we could definitely do that. I mean, there was a lot going on during that time, and everybody was just in shock. Which they should have been. I mean, who would have thought that some radical people would have taken a couple of planes, and running them into a building like the Twin Towers, and then of course causing them to collapse. But it was definitely a lot going on, and man, I remember that day as if it was yesterday.
I think I said it before on the show, and that might have been the first time that I told you this, but my mom, she's retired now, but she spent 37 years in law enforcement, and she was part of a separate specialized unit that was sent to Ground Zero, was sent to the Twin Towers to provide mental health services to the first responders who were literally taking turns going into the rubble looking for bodies. At first it was survivors, and then it just turned into bodies. But she was standing right out there, bro. And I'm talking, this is like a couple of days after it happened. And her and the team were out there. I bring that up for this reason. Unfortunately, most of the people who were taking those trips and providing those that kind of help, they ended up with some really, really bad health issues, cancer and all kinds of stuff. Of the people who went with her on that trip, I think there's less than a handful of them that are left. Most of those folks passed away because of those complications, man. So it
was brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear stories about that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people were affected even beyond just the people who were in the building initially. Really, really terrible what happened, which is why I'll tell you, Devon, I get frustrated when I see, um, and I know it's part of the budget now, but for years they had to vote every year on whether or not they would fund the 9/11 Victims Fund, which provided medical services for anyone who was directly impacted because they were there, just like my mom. So every year, my mom gets checked out and stuff like that, and they're tracking her health as it relates to that, and it's totally different from her normal medical stuff that she has. This is separate from that because this is specifically related to 9/11. But Jon Stewart, the actor, he would testify before Congress every year and basically cuss them out and have to shame them because they didn't want to fund it. And it's like, why wouldn't you fund something like that? You know what I'm saying? Just
Yeah.
really fascinating. So when people say that I'm not into politics, I always shake my head because it's like, bro, politics affects all of our lives, whether you like it or not. And if you're not paying
Yeah,
attention
that
as a
it does.
yeah, and if you're not paying attention as a voter, there's some pretty mean-spirited things that are happening to people that your silence and your lack of attention could help foster. So we got to be paying attention, man, whether we like it or not. We got to be paying attention, you know. But that's neither here nor there. You went viral once again over the Stephanie McMahon stuff. People can't get enough of that story, man. You go every time you talk about Stephanie McMahon, you go viral over that. Every single time, never fails.
What was so I don't get it. What was so viral about it?
Well, this time it was Stephanie, and then it opened up to what you said about the McMahon family in general, just about how people want you to speak negatively about them, and you won't do it because your personal experiences with them were positive, and they did help you and your family and what have you. Um, and they've always had your back. So it would be wrong of you to try to sit here and gossip or talk trash about them when they've been so good to you. And I think people that's a perspective that we don't hear often. So I think every time you point it out in a different ways you point it out, people just eat it up, man. People just eat it up, you know? So shout
Well,
out to
uh,
Stephanie and the family. Stephanie, Devon wants to be on your show. He keeps talking about it. You can ask him yourself about that whole infatuation or lack thereof. There.
what is wrong with you, man? Stop getting these people all riled up again because it's not even like that.
Well, listen. What are you gonna do when she's sitting there with that Stephanie McMahon look on her face and she asks you about, so Devon, you infatuated with me? How would you even handle that question?
I'm gonna be like, hell no, I'm not in any way, shape, or form. I admire you as a person and as an individual, and what you bring to the table, and what you've done since coming into the company, especially when I first came in. Because even though she was born into the business, when she first came in, she started doing things behind the scenes. You could tell she was green, and she knew she was green, but she was willing to learn, and she was under the learning tree of Vince McMahon. And one of the greatest things was, when they started the whole Helmsley and McMahon regime, then she started learning from Hunter. And it was like, you get it from Hunter and you get it from Vince. So therefore, it's like, how can you lose? You're going to come out smart in this business. And she grew up real fast in this business where she caught on like that. She was writing certain storylines, from my understanding, if I can recall back then. She was even going to do some stuff for the Reverend Devon character.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, she actually came to me and said we're gonna start doing um some vignettes because I had these vignettes in mind, and some of the vignettes were like Benny Hinn,
Sure.
the evangelist, and
Yep.
the whole because at that time the movie Malcolm X had made a with Denzel Washington had made a comeback, and they started showing it on TV. I think it even went back into the movie theater. And I was very heavily. I had it on my portable DVD player. I watched it night and day. I studied that movie left and right, And one of the ideas I had, because remember the Reverend Devon character was supposed to be a crooked preacher, because Vince had a hard on, I guess. This is what the saying was in the back, that Vince had a hard on for all these TV evangelists that were getting busted doing wrong, but yet they want to, get on a WWE for what we were doing in terms of story content and adult theme for the programming. And now all of a sudden, the hypocrites are coming out. It was like Malcolm said, the chickens come home to roost, and it was like it was so true in that aspect, because these same people that were bad mouths in the WWE, or I should say the WWF at the time, now these same people who had morals and dignity and all that, now they were getting uh, chastised and in trouble for their actions behind the scene of the pool pit. And I had this idea. If you remember the movie Malcolm X, and you remember when there was a certain scene in the very beginning after he got out of jail, he had came with Elijah Muhammad, and he joined the Nation of Islam, and he was going around preaching, and they kept cutting from scene to scene with him preaching in certain mosques. And it was this one scene where he was saying, come on, like, I guess when his partner who played who was Spike Lee, showed up at the mosque where he was
Shorty.
preaching.
Yeah, Shorty.
And it was, yeah, Shorty, that's what it was. Shorty. And right before he acknowledged Shorty being there, he was like, if you want to bring your life to the Nation of Islam and you want things to change, come on down. It was like being in church when they tell you to come on down to the altar and things. And I saw these women and these guys coming down, but the women was what got me, because I'm like, this is just like the TV evangelists. You think all of these women are coming down to get their souls saved and all of that, but meanwhile the preachers are taking advantage of them. So I said, why don't we do something like that? Why don't we do something where I'm preaching and this and that and going off? And I'm like, you know, if you want salvation, and salvation is right now, then you need to come on down and let Brother Devon lay his hands on you and give you salvation. And I remember I go, I can make this into the most crookedest thing I possibly can, do. And I had the idea from the movie. And so I basically was like, all right, I think this will work. And I remember going to Vince in his office. Stephanie and Hunter were at the computer on the other side of the room, and I know they were kind of listening in a sense. And when I gave Vince the idea, he loved it. He thought it was great. And then I started giving them more ideas, and he was like, "I love what's going on." He was like, "We're gonna get together and do some vignettes and this and that with you. I think this is a hell of a start." I was like, "All right, great," because we were always told, if you got ideas, bring it to them. So I was thinking out the box, left and right. I even wanted to make it more crooked than Brother Love, with the whole diamond rings that he had on and the red face and "I love you." I wanted it to be even worse than that. And so like I said, when I told him that, he loved it, loved the idea. So a producer called me, not a producer, it was a producer called me and said, "Hey, Stephanie wants to get started on those vignettes and so forth and so on. She's going to speak to you at TV." So I said, "Okay, cool." I get to TV. She started talking to me. She started telling me about different things that they wanted to do vignette wise. And then I hit her up with what I had in mind. And when I told her, she goes, "Devon, I love this. This is great." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I think it'll work, Steph." I said, "I think all of this that you're saying and what I'm telling you," I said, "if we combine it together, this Reverend Devon character could be huge." And then all of a sudden, after that conversation, I was supposed to get a phone call from the person who was working underneath Stephanie to set up arrangements for me to come down to Stamford, Connecticut and start shooting this stuff. And all of a sudden, I didn't get any answers. I didn't get no phone calls or nothing. And so I said, okay, well, maybe they're just delaying it. I waited some more, about a week or 2 weeks later, and still nothing. That was when I was like, what the hell's going on? I don't get it. And then come to find out that the whole project had been pulled. They didn't want to do it no more. I think it was one of those things where Vince woke up one morning and said, the Reverend Devon character isn't getting over. Forget it, scotch it. And I was just like, oh wow. I was like, okay. I didn't find out until years later that that's exactly what happened. He just decided he didn't want to go that route no more. So the Reverend Devon character never got off the way it should have. And I was very disappointed because I thought me and Stephanie was could really work together because she was brand spanking new in terms of doing stuff like that. And here it is, a new character for me and this and that. I thought the ideas that we both had, if we put our heads together, man, we could have did a good job on that stuff. And unfortunately, it never happened.
Really, really interesting history there, and I agree with you. I think that character, the fact that we're all these years later and people are still talking about it, tells you everything you need to know. That character was a lot more over than we realize. Um, First of all, your memory is so sharp. Malcolm X came out in '92. The Malcolm X movie starring Denzel Washington. That was 1992 when it
Hmm.
came out. So the Reverend Devon character debuted in 2002. So when you said that Malcolm X started getting hot again, it's because it was the 10-year anniversary. So this was the release of the DVD, the Malcolm X DVD, and the movie being remastered. That's why it was back in the public discourse and getting a second life, so to speak. There, so sharp, 100% on your part there. Great memory. That makes sense. Um, but yeah, man, that character, people still talk about it. People come up to you at the conventions and want to have you and talk about it. That character could have been hot, man. Could have been real hot.
Yeah,
And, you
I mean,
know,
that's the way Vince was. I mean, love him or hate him or whatever. That's just the way he was. One minute he'd be hot on something, and then the next day he didn't want anything to do with it. And that's exactly what happened. Because I remember getting feedback from Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, even Undertaker, and was like, "Man, Reverend, messing around with me. Reverend, what's the good word for the day?" And I remember Taker telling me he loved the character. Everybody in the back pretty much loved the character, but it didn't hit Vince the right way, and he was like, we're gonna move in a new direction. We're gonna put the Dudley Boys back. I'm not liking this Reverend Devon. And I remember I was pissed. I was angry because I thought it was working. The people were coming down from the cheap seats to put $1 in a collection box. I mean, it was working really really good, and it broke me in two to hear that they didn't want to go any further with it. And then they went from saying no to the character, then putting me and Farouk together. And I thought that was magic because Farouk's like my dad. He gave me advice. He helped me out so much. And I always looked up to him like a father figure. And I just remember him telling me certain things to do, certain things not to do. And then there was a couple of times where I had a singles match where he was on the outside as a manager. And Duke, I tell you, him, telling me, Devon, there you go, that's what you do. It was like having a real legit manager for me at ringside. It was like I always felt comfortable if I had a singles match, if he was down there.
that's interesting. I don't even remember you and Farouk being put together. How long did that last?
It's six, not even, oh man, maybe 2 months.
Wow.
And the SmackDown tag team titles were just made, I believe. And I think it was because of the the branding extension. And I remember the titles were vacant, and there was a tournament for it. And me and Farouk worked our way up until it was me and Farouk versus Edge and Rey Mysterio.
Wow. Another interesting pairing that you wouldn't see coming. Wow. That's cool. I got to go back and watch those matches, man. Now you got to be
Yeah.
bringing me back here. Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, listen, I know that we had promised we are going to be doing a Dave Batista episode. So let's hold off and we'll do that next week because Dave's birthday is on the 18th of January. So we'll do a deep dive on Dave Batista. He was Deacon Batista. So, with the Reverend Devon character, it'll be interesting to hear some never heard before stories about your time with Batista and being his mentor in that regard and what have you, getting him ready. Because boy, after that whole Deacon Batista thing, he had the rocket ship and he hasn't looked back since. Huh?
You know, I always tease Dave when I speak to him every once in a while. I go, you know what? When you get one of those movies, just give me a small cameo role with a lot of money at the end of it. He starts laughing. I
That'll
said,
work.
remember, man, I helped you. I
That's right.
helped tremendously.
Listen, that kid was
But
wet behind
you
the
know,
ears, and now he's a Hall of Famer. I would say it worked damn well.
yeah, it did. I mean, Dave was really, really green when he came to me. Um, and working with him and before the matches, before they opened up doors, get to the ring and go down there to help him out and just to making stuff really, really look legit. And there were times where we wrestled each other when I knew, Vince had a hard on for a lot of guys at the time to step up to the plate and, become something. And a lot of these guys didn't know how to do that because they basically was never taught or they were still making the same little mistakes, that they've always made throughout their whole career. And so, me personally, I look at it as, me helping Dave, to get off at me helping Dave was something that I treasured. I loved it. And, you know, we had some really fun times together. We really did. Um, Rev, uh, Dave never called me Devon, or he never called me Devon. It was always Rev. Hey, Rev, what's going on, Rev? He would always call me Rev. And it was kind of like walking out in public with him was wow. I mean, remember when he first came, to WWE, he was freaking every bit of 325 pounds of solid muscle, 6'5", 6'4", 6'5". Walking with him was like was watching a freaking drive-in movie on his back. That's how big that man was.
Wow, wow, incredible.
People would part like the Red Sea when we walked down. I mean, they would look at him in awe, but they would part like the Red Sea because he was just that big. I mean, there's only one guy I've seen bigger than Batista, but we never worked together. Was Warlord
Yeah,
from the Powers
yeah.
of Pain? Now that man was ridiculous. How big he was.
And he kept getting bigger. I mean, when you look at him, when you look at him when he was in the NWA, and you compare that to his WWE run, that dude just kept getting bigger.
Yeah, he was one big walking mass.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. Well, like I said, next week we'll do the deep dive into Batista as a nice little birthday present for a great friend of yours and a guy who's beloved, Hall of Famer, big time movie star. In fact, he has a new movie coming out with Jason Momoa, Aquaman. They got a new buddy cop movie that's coming out soon. So you know, Batista, like you said, Devon just needs one role. You could make him a reverend in one of your movies, Batista. Come on now, come on now.
That wouldn't be a bad idea. It
You
wouldn't be
know
that far away from home in reality.
exactly, exactly. That would be cool. That would be cool. But listen, man, I know again we got the technical difficulties and what have you, so we're trying to get the most out of this that we can. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up because it's what everybody's talking about. It continues to dominate discussion, the dirt sheets, um, this whole thing with Jim Ross saying what he said to you and being revealed as a person who said those terrible racist things to you years ago, and just the fallout from him being identified. So JR on his show, Grilling JR with Conrad Thompson, they put out a new episode, and suddenly JR has kind of walked back his I'm not pursuing a conversation. And now he's saying, "Oh, I want to have a conversation with Devon, and I like Devon, and I don't know what all the problem is, and all this." So he's starting to change his tune a little bit, which I'm sure has to have something to do with the fact that there were witnesses. Number one, and number two, as you pointed out, at least the first time at the WWE restaurant, WWE New York, JR was probably drunk because he certainly had plenty to drink. And we've heard from other folks, including Booker T, that back during those years, JR used to drink a lot. That's what Booker said. Um, and Conrad brought that up on the show, and JR didn't deny it, that he enjoyed his liquor, so to speak. So it's interesting to see him kind of back down a little bit from all that nonsense he was talking at first. And, now he's saying that he definitely wants to have a conversation and let's set it up and all this other good stuff. But something popped up, Devon, and I want to make sure that you're on the record as clear as possible so there's no confusion. Sick and tired of people twisting words or making up their own narrative, so let's just hit it head on. During that episode, Conrad brought up the fact that he and Maven's a good friend of yours. He and Maven had a conversation, texting back and forth, and I guess Maven has positioned himself somewhat as a middleman or a peacemaker, or what have you. He has a relationship with JR as well. He stated he loves JR and all that good stuff, and he's a very good friend of yours. And at least according to Conrad, Maven said to him that he's going to get you and JR together. And Maven floated the idea of you and JR recording something on JR's podcast. And I thought that was strange because, you and I talk often enough and we record with each other often enough that I know that this isn't just content for you. This is your real life that you're talking about.
I'm not interested. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off. I'm not interested in any way, shape, or form to put it on video. It's like you started to say, this is not content that I think should be on a video between two guys who had an issue. Well, I should say one guy because JR says he doesn't seem to have an issue with me. Okay. But I had the issue with him. And, it doesn't need to be videoed. It doesn't need to be on video. Two men can sit down and talk and iron this out without video. I'm not asking for a crowd. I'm not asking for a crowd at all. And hell, I'm not even really asking for JR to come sit down and talk. He doesn't have to. I mean, if he would like, I'd be more than happy to, but he doesn't have to. The thing about it is, it was said. Whether he remembers or not, it was said. And one of the things I got to say is that I'm not looking to gain any YouTube subscribing views or anything. Remember, the question was asked of me, had I experienced anything, and I said it on two different occasions. Once on Maven's channel, and I didn't say anything. In other words, I didn't say who it was. I just said a top official in WWE. Then the second time it was asked of me was on my show with Bubba and Maven. Had I ever experienced it? And I said, yes, I had. I said, not to have to go into any names, but, I don't wish to do that. And this is, whatever. And, Bubba said, jokingly, say the name. And I said, and all I said was, listen, I'm not going to go into detail. I didn't wear a 10-gallon hat and this and that. And I left it at that. And then Maven yelled out, go Sooners. And I think that right there sparked everybody into thinking, okay, it must have been JR. And because 10-gallon hat and then go Sooners. So it was like the cat was out of the bag again. I didn't ask for all of this. I just simply answered the question and that was it. So even for those, JR fans, I didn't go out there and put the man's name out there for no reason. It was asked of me, had I ever experienced anything, and I answered it. Again, I didn't ask for it to come out now. It did. Not to mention, like I said earlier, me mentioning it back then, I felt that I would get crucified, basically. And I had I couldn't say anything because I felt like I would get messed with in the company. I didn't know the ramifications or of anything like this getting out if they were going to be on my side or not. So I kept my mouth shut for many years. And every time I saw JR, I held a sense of resentment towards him because of that. So, maybe it was something on God's timing that it all had to come out so it could all be resolved. I don't know. But, again, I don't have any ill feelings towards him. I mean, again, if he wants to sit down and talk, we can sit down and talk, but I'm not doing it with cameras because nobody else needs to know what me and JR talk about with me and JR.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let me just say this. So we're clear on the history, folks, because I want to make sure that, a year from now, 2 years from now, 30 years from now, when people go back and revisit this, that everyone is clear. When JR and Conrad released their episode on Christmas Day, which is a very strange thing to do because it basically got, it's almost like you're trying to bury the news there. But on Christmas Day, when they put out that response and JR was so indignant and ignorant, and these are my words here, and offensive. Well, maybe Devon is jealous because he's not as successful as Bubba. When he was talking that garbage, it was just like, all right, you going for round two, taking a shot at somebody. And Conrad and I, because the fans had reached out, they tagged me in the video, they tagged Conrad. Conrad and I had a little back and forth publicly, and then we took it to private messaging. And I've never made any bones about it. Conrad and I are cool. We've never had an issue with each other. So I told him flat out. I said, look, there were witnesses. You didn't prepare JR. He's just shooting off the hip, not realizing that there were other people who were there. And at least one of them, Bubba, is on the record. So to deny it, you kind of look like a fool because there were witnesses. But the way that it ended with Conrad and Conrad proposed this, he said, hey, sometime down the line, if JR and Devon are at a convention together, can we get them in the same room to hash it out? And I said to Conrad, I said, well, here's the deal. Devon is already on the record saying that he forgives JR, number one, because that's who he is. That's what God commands. And that's not the whole Reverend Devon thing is not a gimmick. This is actually this man's values. Son of two bishops. This is actually Devon Dudley's values. So he's already forgiven him, but he's also willing to have a conversation. So if JR is willing to have a conversation, of course Conrad's willing to have of course Devon's willing to have a conversation, especially if they're in the same building. Because clearly JR said he's not buying lunch and he's not seeking out a conversation. That's what he said initially, which was just ignorant, in my opinion. And Conrad and I left it there, right? So it's not lost on me, this conversation that Conrad and Maven had. I don't know if Maven reached out first or if Conrad reached out first or somebody else. But what I do know is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Devon, you didn't know that Maven was going to be having that conversation with Conrad about this whole situation, did you?
No, I found out when I saw the video.
There it is.
Yeah, I found out when I saw the video, and I was like, "Oh, they had a conversation. I didn't know this." So I talked to May. I called Maven, talked to him, and I asked him. I said, "Did you call Comrade and have a conversation?" And he said, "Yeah." He talked to him, and he said that he wanted to see where he was and how they were thinking about things and things like that. And I was just like, "All right, well, you know." Again, I'm not gonna bother. I'm not gonna bother this man any more than he's already been bothered with this stuff in terms of trying to sit down and have a conversation. Listen, it was brought up in their show about possibility of making that happen, and I basically wasn't opposed to it. But like JR said, I'm not gonna go seek it out either. If I bump into you at a convention and you say to me, "Let's talk," okay, we can go talk. And if I bump into you at a convention and you don't say nothing to me, then I don't say nothing to you. And we move on. but I hate the fact that
Absolutely.
it's going on this long. Um, am I looking for an apology? No, I'm not. Because if the man doesn't believe he did it or said it, then there's not going to be an apology to be said. So you have to pretty much know that you did say it, and there is some sense of remorse.
I think that's what's lost in all of this. Because even Conrad had said that to me. What's the end game here? What are you guys looking for? And it's like, buddy, this man is just talking about his life and his experiences. Every time I listen to Jim Ross open his damn mouth, his barbecue sauce drinking mouth, Jim Ross is being very uh, unapologetic and direct about his experiences and his opinion, not only on what's happened in general, but specific individuals. That one was a great wrestler. I got a lot of time for that one. That one was the worst wrestler I ever did business with. I told you what he said about John Laurinaitis, where he said that everything negative happening to him, he's happy that it's happening to him. So you know, if Jim Ross can sit here for over 30 years and document his life and his experiences and his thoughts on everything, I'm pretty sure Devon Dudley can do the same thing.
No, just one of the things is I don't think we should ever say that somebody's happy for somebody's downfall. I mean, whether they deserve it or not. I mean, God is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. Let him do that. It's not for us to say. But, people honestly, they feel the need to say when they felt like they've been wronged by an individual. So they feel like they have to lash out and say things that might not be appropriate. Again, who am I to say what's appropriate or what's inappropriate? All I know is I don't feel that somebody should sit there and say, it's good for what they got and this and that. Because one day it's going to happen with you. And when it does, people are going to be saying that about you.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I'll put a bow on it with this. I don't know who reached out to who first, but I'm not surprised. Um, I'm not trying to get a job in the wrestling business. I don't know Jim Ross. I know of him as a fan, but I don't personally know Jim Ross. I don't have a relationship with Jim Ross. I don't owe Jim Ross anything. So my position on all of this stuff is something was said. Devon has expressed himself on it. If you want to have a conversation and see if everybody can find some kind of middle ground, then I'm all for that, and I would help with that. But at the end of the day, Devon Dudley deserves to be able to speak his mind just like everybody else, and that's all I care about. So if anyone's trying to go around me to try to find a way to give somebody an easier time than what I've presented, I'm not surprised. But I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't going to work. Either Jim Ross is going to man up and have a conversation as a man, and he and Devon will do that privately without anybody else, without cameras, without audio. There's just the two of them having a conversation, and that'll be the end of it. Or not. But for anyone who's trying to self-deal or do anything outside of that, good luck to you. It ain't going to happen. It ain't going to work. And I'll just leave it at that. Anyway, Devon, I know that this Verizon outage. I just saw it flash as a major story right now. It's huge all over the country. It's having a big problem. So how about we wrap this one up for now? What's the best way everybody can reach out to you and keep up with everything you got going on?
Well, hold on. Being that this is a big story and everybody's committed to it in terms of the Verizon thing, how come they can't go viral? Why the hell do I got to go viral every single time? Why don't the dirt sheets write about that? I'm
Huh?
just
It's a good.
curious. Inquiring minds would like to know.
It's a good question. It's a good question. You know, it's a good question. We may need to figure that one out. It's a good question.
Yeah, I
You
want
know,
Verizon to go viral.
well, give them time. Well, now that you're talking about it, we may help them get there.
Yeah. Come on, dirt sheets, right? You're still talking about Stephanie McMahon. How about you talk about Verizon now? Shit. Damn.
Listen, they try to typecast you now. I got a lot of flack about the long-legged Mac Daddy. We might have to make some shirts for you now. Long-legged Mac Daddy, Devon
What?
Dudley. You know,
Wait a minute. You got slack from that?
no, people were cracking up over it, man. People were cracking up over it. I told them, I said,
Oh
yeah, you better
God.
hide your wives. You better watch
No,
out.
you ain't gotta
Devon's
worry.
coming, baby.
Listen, you ain't gotta worry about me. I'm old as hell.
Hey, we saw you in that match. You moving just fine now. Don't start that now. Come on.
Listen, don't you start because the bottom line is if you keep saying that, people are gonna believe it and they're gonna want me to come back, and I ain't doing it. I am not doing it at all.
Listen, we need you and Gunter to figure it out. All right. He over here. He just beat AJ Styles. He might have Devon Dudley on his list. You better watch out now.
Well, listen, I love Gunter. I really do. I love his style. I love how he is. I love his performance in the ring. Listen, the 1940s and 50s wrestling used to be nothing but shooters. And when you look at Gunter and his style, that's what you see. And I'm a big fan of that because I was taught by a
Yeah.
shooter in Johnny Rods. So to see Gunter go out there and to wrestle like that, as opposed to these flips and flyings and all of that, and the entertainment part of it, and get over. In other words, he's not doing any of that stuff, but he's getting over from wrestling. That's what I love the most about his character. He took something that people probably would have said would never get over, and he would never last in WWE. And look at him now. Not
Look at him
only
now.
not only he's over, but he's probably one of the best heels that the WWE has seen in a long time.
I mean, he's the guy. He has to be the guy. You beat John Cena. You got to be the guy.
I saw
Simple
him.
as that.
I
He's the
saw him.
number one heel.
I saw him at Monday Night Raw when I went and took my daughter, and I bumped into him, and I said Gunter, and I almost said Walter. I almost went back to Walter, and
Uh-oh.
I said, Gunter. And he turned around and he goes, Devon. I was like, hey, man. I was like, I'm so happy for your success. Love the match. Love the matches that you've been having. And this and that. I didn't bring up the John Cena one, but I just said, love the matches you've been having, man. I love that you're getting over the way you are. Keep up the great work and this and that. He said, Devon, thank you very much. That means a lot. I was like, bro, you deserve it. I said, I remember being your producer for a live event show that you came up from NXT um, to the main roster at a live event, and I was like, I loved your character then, and I love it even more now. I just think it's great.
And those words from legends like yourself, man. That's you could really carry a person with something like that because you don't know how they're feeling about dealing with all of this pressure.
I mean, I can only imagine. I can only imagine what he felt when he walked out of that arena the night after beating Cena. He had to be walked out of there. He had to be, escorted out. I can only imagine what he went through.
That ain't easy to do, man. You take out one of the greatest of all time, the greatest WWE superstar of all time, and you hope it lands the right way, but you don't really know. You know, you don't really know because it's not even about that moment. It's about what do you do with it afterwards.
Let me ask you a question,
Sure.
and because maybe you would know more than I would. In terms of most money making champion, I guess is what I how you could say it, of all time in WWE. Is it John Cena? Would it have not been Hogan?
The It's a great question. So, in the short term, right? In the short term, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin. In the short term,
Right. You know what? And again, short term, yes, because of the 316 and all of that. When all that stuff came out,
yeah.
he went crazy. But long term, I mean, Hogan was on
Well,
top for how long?
it's not even about Hogan being on top for how long. He became the biggest icon in pro wrestling history, and he still is. No one's bigger than Hulk Hogan in that regard.
So let me ask you a question.
So,
When you say the greatest of all time, what aspect are we saying that as? As a performer in the ring, as a wrestler, or a box office draw?
so here it comes. No one has been the top guy in WWE longer than John Cena. The fact that John Cena never went to another territory and he stayed in the company through the tough times, through the best times, and in between, and he was the marquee guy. He was the number one guy. Even when he wasn't champion, he was still the biggest draw. That's why they say he's the greatest of all time.
Okay, but was it Hogan? And
Not
again,
even,
people gonna be thinking I'm defending Hogan, and I'm not defending Hogan because I was a Hulkamaniac, yes. And of course, because of all the stuff with the racial stuff and all of that that came out, what the hell? Devon's on Hogan's jock. No, I'm not. I'm asking legit questions because when I grew up in the Hogan and Andre era, there was nobody bigger. And I remember every single person said there would never be anybody like Hulk Hogan that will be able to carry the company the way he did. Um, it's like that LeBron versus Jordan type of deal. Who's LeBron and who's Jordan in this aspect? Is Hogan Jordan and Cena LeBron, or is LeBron Hogan and Cena Jordan? That I'm asking. I'm not saying. I'm asking a question.
I'll put it to you like this. For WWE, Hogan is more Bill Russell and Cena is Jordan.
Okay, I can see that. Okay, Bill Russell. Okay,
Bill Russell won more championships than everybody else. He got 11 championships,
yeah, but Bill Russell
right?
would be considered for the Boston Celtics, not the overall business. The overall business, Jordan carried that the NBA for him all through the 80s and all through the 90s.
Well, Bill Russell, for those 11 championships, did the same thing. You don't get to Jordan without Bill Russell.
Oh, I never.
So even though we didn't see it on TV ourselves, if you just look at the history, Bill Russell supported the entire industry being who he was and winning those championships and being the focal point of the team, more importantly, in winning those championships.
Okay, I didn't know that. I thought I had it all in basketball's history, and I guess I didn't look at it that way. Okay, I can
I mean,
see.
11 championships, man. He got one for each finger, and he has one for his other leg. I mean, it's like he's always going to be the man. But because people didn't actually see him, most people talk about it. That's why they don't necessarily talk about it as much as they should. But no, Bill Russell was the man. The problem is, and it's the same thing with Hogan. Hulk Hogan. That brand is as big as WWE as a brand, right? As far as market visibility and what have you, he's as big as the company. The problem is he did it in multiple places. John Cena stayed in one place and did it. And he stayed in one place for over 20 years and what was it, like 19 years, 19, 20 years and did it. That's why he has to get the nod. Because he's still top merch seller. He's still a guy, still selling out pay-per-view PLEs and all that stuff. Even at the very end, John Cena was still the draw.
Okay,
That's why he's got to be considered the guy,
okay,
you know.
all right. Then.
And no one else. I mean, Roman Reigns, he's not ever going to be John Cena. He's not going to last that long, quite frankly, you know. So we can't even envision somebody who will do what John Cena did ever again.
Well, he's probably
Who would
out there.
last
He's
that long?
probably out there. He's probably listening to the podcast right now.
Yeah, you never, or he could be in the company. Listen, Dom Mysterio could be that guy. You never know.
Could be. You never know.
Dom Mysterio could be like, look, this is my home for the rest of my career. Simple. That's the end of that. But no matter if business was taking a dip or if business was up, when you look at the marquee, If John Cena was at the top, you were going to do good business. And even if he wasn't champion, he was still selling more merch than everybody else, still getting more requests, Make a Wish and all that other media requests. He's the man, you know?
Okay.
So now the interesting part is if you open it up to the business in general, now you got to add in Ric Flair and some other names and stuff like that. Bruno Sammartino had a hell of a run, right?
That was another name I was going to say. What about Bruno?
The problem with Bruno though is he once you got out of the Northeast and you started getting into like mid South or even going to the West Coast, Bruno was not he wasn't a draw at all.
Yeah, but did Bruno now? Correct me if I'm wrong. Did Bruno leave WWE to go somewhere else, even after he was on top in WWE for so long?
He did. I think Bruno went to did he go to UWF? He
Yeah,
might
but
have went to UWF for a short stint. And they had TV, so we got to say that they were a national company.
yeah,
They
but
had
he but
TV.
he was knocking on the retirement door. I mean, he was really knocking on it at that
Oh,
time.
100%. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. He was well past his prime. But what does that even mean? I mean, when Hulk Hogan came back after WCW was put out of business, and then they put the belt on Hogan for that last run, I'm sure him and Bruno were around the same age at that point.
Maybe.
So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, well, you know, Cena's almost 50, right? He's knocking on 50's door.
Either 47 or 48 years old.
That's not old any. Listen, when they were in their 30s, people were calling Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair old.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I used to tell people all the time when you were in your 20s back in the day, you were the guy that got beat up all the time because you didn't have experience and nothing like that. Nowadays, when you're in
Yeah,
your 20s, now you have a chance to become a star. By the time you
yeah,
got to your 30s in WWE, you were barely scratching mid card.
yep,
And then by the time you got into your mid to late 30s, going into your 40s, now you started winning matches and somewhat knocking on the door to main event status. And then once you got into your mid 40s, now you're freaking main event because now you're
yep,
considered a seasoned vet.
yep,
So it's
yep.
it's weird
I
how the
mean,
business has changed, and how people go, oh well, they're old and this and that. I'm like, I remember, when me and Bubba came back, people were like, oh, the Dudleys are too old and this and that and blah blah blah. They need to give it up. I'm like, wait a minute, AJ Styles is only 4 years younger than me. Titus O'Neil was knocking on the door, the three, maybe 4 years as well. All these guys were their mid to late 30s, but yet they're considered the young boys. But because me and Bubba been on TV and been around for so long, we're the old guys.
yeah,
You know, we're the old guys. And people in their 40s and 50s, if you can still go, then God bless you. Go. Why stop? You've been blessed to be able to do that. So go. Stop listening to people out there that say you're too old. Just go.
the rules have changed,
Yeah, they have.
and perception has changed. More importantly, people don't view it the same way they used to. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
You know, I look at the Miz. The Miz is literally he's hit that legend status now where even when he's playing a heel, he's still getting cheered.
Right.
You know, he's still over as anything because he's the Miz didn't win a singles match in 2025. You would never know that. That's how over he is. You know, and how old is he? He's what 45, 46 years old at this point,
And can still go with no problems.
and can still go with no problems. He is as good as he ever has been. Better, you know. And if you put the title on him for a run right now, it would make sense. You would look at that and you would say, well, it's the Miz, of course. It would make sense, you know. So it's all changed, man. It's all changed. But that's what happens when the company becomes the focal point versus any individual wrestler. You know, it's amazing how they pulled that off. But here
I
we
mean,
are.
I'll be honest with you. I'm glad I was in the generation that I was in because nowadays I feel Nowadays, I feel like it's too much. There's so much expectation for an individual coming into the WWE. You have to be like you have to have everything top notch now. Where before you would learn as you go, but now it's like you got to be 100% before you even get in the ring.
That's a good point. You know, to take that even a step further, this is why I say Michael Cole, in my opinion, is the greatest commentator of all time because what he has to cover is totally different than what Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone, Gordon Soley, and everybody else. Michael Cole has to sell every match on the card. He has to sell the advertisements. He has to sell the PLE, and he has to talk about the match in front of him. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? He's doing so much. Got people in his ear as he's relaying the information, and he has to know everything at all times. That dude is the greatest.
no, that's true.
You know, a lot of people would disagree, but nah, Michael Cole's the greatest, man.
It's
He's the greatest.
it's not just the talent in the ring; it's also the talent outside the ring.
Devon, why don't you let everybody know the best way that they can keep up with you and everything you got going on, man?
All right. Well, I am at Testify Devon, um, Testify Devon, and on Instagram, Testify Devon on Twitter. My Facebook is private, but then you have my YouTube channel, which is doing extremely well. Please check it out, like and subscribe. Leave your comments below, and we read everything. So that's basically where you can find me. And I'm just enjoying life right now, man.
Damn right, and well deserved and well earned. Let's call it what it is. You know, folks, as always, Duke Loves Wrestling on Facebook, on X, Duke Loves Wrestling at gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. Keep sending in your suggestions and what have you, and keep sharing the show. We appreciate that. You're keeping us hot. You're keeping us hot. You're loving the content, and all we can do is continue to give you what you're asking for. So we appreciate that. Real quick, Devon, you have a signing. What is it? Is it next weekend or is it this weekend?
The 24th and 25th, Daytona.
There we go. There we go. Daytona. So you make sure that you get ready for that. Check out Devon's Instagram. We have all the information there. What do you got for our word of the week, bro?
Well, I've said it before, but I think it's fitting to say it again. Do unto others as you want others to do unto you.
The golden rule. Got that right.
Absolutely.
Testify.
My brother.
Strictly for the culture every day. Stepping style in your unique way. Patterns and colors so defined. All about the perfect line. Be yourself, let your spirit fly. In this fashion, you'll touch the sky. Strictly for the culture, brand so fine. Dress to impress and show your shine. Strictly for the culture, every day. Step in style in your unique way.
Visit www.strictlyfortheculture.ca.
Backstage whispers and the crowds roar. From matching giants to legends of yore. Devon's wisdom and Duke's keen view. Every episode feels like it's brand new. Devon and Duke bring the heat. Wrestling tales knock you off your seat. Tune in now, don't you be late. Wrestling podcast never